course, for our session, we will be having measures of variability. Okay? Now, take note, measures of variability. This describes the set of scores in terms of their spread or heterogeneity. How spread the scores are or how close are they from each other. Consider these two groups of scores. Group 1, 5, 9, and 1. Group 2, 5, 6, and 4. Now, let me ask you this question. What is the mean of group number 1? What is 9 plus 5 plus 1? Again, it is 15 divided by 3. So the mean is 5. Oh, let's go to the next group. 5, 6, 4. What's the mean there? 5 plus 6 plus 4 is 15 divided by 3. So take note, the mean of the two groups are the same. But look at their scores. What have you noticed? Describe their scores. 9. Yes, go on. From the first group, what have you noticed? Lagyo kaayo ang scores. Oh, 9, 5, 1. Ang group number 2, the scores are close to each other. Now, both have a mean and a median of 5. But group 2 has much more homogeneous. It's much more homogeneous because the scores or similar scores than group 1. So, ang scores sa group number 2, they are much more close together compared that of group 1. So, I can say that, probably group 2 kay homogeneous ni nga klase. Because their scores, nagtapok the same lang siya. I can say that group number 1 is a hetero class because they have different scores. That's one thing to consider. Okay? Next. Variability is the spread or dispersion of scores. Take note of that definition. These are the different measures of variability. The range, we had that one last time. The mean deviation, another name for the mean deviation, you can also call that as the absolute mean deviation. So the mean deviation is similar with the absolute mean deviation. So kining duha, this is already okay because we had that one last meeting. For the second two, we will be considering now the standard deviation and the variance. So, kining duha is our focus this afternoon. Now, let's have a recap first. The range is the easiest measure of variability to calculate. It is used when the measure of central tendency is the mode or the median. Simply the difference between the highest and the lowest. That's all about the range. So what we're doing right now is simply we are making a review on the range. The range is simply highest minus the lowest score. Now, what is the range in the set of scores below? 7, 2, 7, 6, 5, 6, 2. What's the highest score there? What is the lowest score? So you have 7 minus 2. The range is 5. So the range is 5. Simple as that. Okay? The highest minus the lowest. Let's continue. Now let's go to variance and standard deviation. Variance is a measure of the dispersion of a sample or how closely the observation cluster around the mean or the average, also known as the mean of the squared deviation. Okay, so take note of that definition. Well, the standard deviation, this is the square root of the variance. And it is the measure of variation in the observed values. So just consider those two definitions, and let's go to standard deviation first. Let's start with standard deviation. Standard deviation is a measure of variability used with the mean. So the range is used with the mode and the median. When we have the mean, we will be talking about now the standard deviation. Indicates the amount that all scores differ or deviate from the mean. The more the scores differ from the mean, the higher the standard deviation. The sum of the deviations of the scores from the mean is always 0. Okay, now let's consider this one. So the standard deviation is simply a measure of how spread, so take note of that, how spread the scores or the numbers are. So look at this symbol. I'm going to change the color first of the pen. So take note of this symbol. This is the symbol for the standard deviation, the population standard deviation. Okay? So I'm going to be using this one if I'm referring to the population. But if I'm referring to the sample only, not the population itself, I'm going to be using the letter S alone. So take note, this will be our formula. When you are given or when you are solving the population standard deviation, these two will be used. But we will not focus on that. We will focus on this formula because what I'm after of is simply the sample variance. So take note, the sample variance is simply S squared. The sample standard deviation is simply the letter S. So in our formula, we need to get the mean first. Take note, then the score minus the mean, you square it, then you add all of those things divided by n minus 1. So take note, S squared is the variance of a sample. S is the sample standard deviation. X there is the value, the scores. X bar, that's the mean of the sample. And n is the total number of observations. Now let's apply this over our first example. You and your friends have just measured the heights of your cats in millimeters. The heights at shoulder level are 150, 200, 250, 280. Find the variance and the standard deviation. So, in our first column, we will be putting there the x values. So, what are the x values here, section Galileo? $150, let me write it down. Next, 200, next, 250, next, 280. Now, the first thing to solve is you solve for the mean. I guess this one isn't clear. Okay. We need to solve the mean. What is the mean? That's simply the sum of all the data there, the data, divided by how much? Okay, use your calculator, please. What's the sum there divided by 4? How much do you get? Again, you add 150, 200, 250, 280. The sum, divide that by 4. How much do you get? 220. So this will be our mean now. So going back to our table. So our table will now look like this. So we have start with the x minus the mean. Okay, the x here is 150 minus the mean, that's 220. What's 150 minus 220? Negative 70. Next, 200 minus 220. How much is that? Negative 20. What about 250 minus 220? 30. What about 280 minus 220? 6. Now, diba I mentioned a while ago, if I'm gonna be adding all of these, how much is the sum? What is negative 70 minus 20 plus 30 plus 60? Ato lang i-check because I said a while ago that the sum of the deviations is equal to 0. And what we are doing right now, this one, these are what you call the deviations over here. Now, if you'll be adding the deviations, how much do you get? It's 0, right? So next is, you square the deviations. X minus the mean squared. Okay, square negative 70. You will get 4,900 positive. You square 20. How much do you get? 20 times 20. That will give you 400. 30 squared. 900. 60 squared. There you go. Now, what are you going to do next? The next thing to do is add all the numbers that you squared. Okay? So, let's get the sum now. This is now, we are having the summation of the x minus the mean squared. Kindly add all these values here. 4,900 plus 400 plus 900 plus 3,600. How much do you get? $9,800. Okay, now let's make use of the formula now. Let's start with the variance. So the variance is simply this one. We are solving for the variance first. The variance is equal to s squared. That is equal to the summation of the deviation squared all over n minus 1. Now, what is your denominator equal to? So, katong gi-add nato nga gi-square, kining gipang-add nato, mao ni siya atong denominator. Now, what is the value of n? How many measurements do we have? How many number of data do we have? 1, 2, 3. There are 4. 4 minus 1. So, what is 9,800 divided by 3? Two decimal places lang. Sige, go. I-round off, that becomes 0.67. So this is now what you call your variance. If you will continue solving that, if I will be continue to solve this one, I will be getting, ayaw isuwat hangad, the square root of 3266.67. Whatever is the value of your calculator, get its square root. So meaning, the value is simply the square root of 9,800 all over 3. How much is your answer? Just in 2 decimal places. So, i-divide ng 9,800 by 3. Ang result, you get the square root. It will give you how much? Let's use a excuse me. Let's use the scientific calculator, okay? So we have, wait ha, I'm gonna look at my desktop first. Downloads, desktop. Where's my calculator here? Where are you? FX, where is FX? Can you see the calculator? FFF. Letter E. Where is it? It's an application. Apex. Do you see a calculator section? Galileo? Where is my calculator here? So, I need to minimize this first. Okay? Let's just keep this. And then there is okay, there you go. So we have our calculator here. It's very, very important. Pila ganitong answer nato? Pwede diretso sa square root. Nya human press this. That was how much? 9,800. Bring the cursor down. 3 equals. Then press this to give you 57.15. Okay? So let's go back to our presentation. This is equal to 57.15. So our standard deviation is this one. This is the standard deviation. Okay, so take note. If it's only s squared, that's called the variance. If you're going to take the square root of the s squared of the variance, that is now your standard deviation. Is our first example clear? Okay, let's have our second example. I will give you only 2 examples, okay? Now, let's start with the values now. Sir, pwede ra dili i-arrange ang mga numbers? Pwede ra jud kaayo dili i-arrange in increasing or decreasing order. So, what do you want? Do you want to arrange the scores? Or let's just as it is? As it is lang ni siya? Okay, 24, 8, 10, 24, 22, 15, 23, 12, 10, and 14. Okay, let's get the mean first. So we have, change colors at the we have the mean. Kindly add all those numbers. 24 plus 8 plus 10 plus 24 plus 22 plus 15 plus 23 plus 12 plus 10 and plus 14. How much do you get? Let's make use of that. Atong i-minimize para atong gamit ang calculus. We have 24 plus 8 plus 10 plus 24 plus 20, plus 22 plus 15 plus 23 plus 12 plus 10 plus 14. How much is the sum? 162. Pila may i-divide na ko ani niya section Galileo. Divided by 10. So how much is the mean here? Okay, there you go. So take note. I'm gonna go back to our presentation. So this is 162 divided by 10. Sorry, the color isn't clear. So this is 162 divided by 10. You will get 16.2 will be the mean. Okay, let's subtract right away. I will not be showing the solution here. You give me the difference right away. What is 24 minus 16.2? 7.8. Next, 8 minus 16.2. Negative 8.2. 10 minus 16.2. Negative 6.2. 24 minus 16.2. 7.8. 22 minus 16.2. 5.8. 15 minus 16.2. Negative 1.2. 23 minus 16.2. 6.8. What about 12 minus 16.2? What about 10 minus 6.2? What about 14 minus 16.2? Okay, let's check sa. I-add daw ni tanan. I-add sa daw ni nato. Will it give you 0? You verify. You try to add 7.8 minus 8.2 minus 6.2 plus 7.8 plus 5.8 minus 1.2 plus 6.8 minus 4.2 minus 6.2 minus 2.2. How much do you get? Were you able to get 0 for that? Yes, you will always get 0 for that. Now, next. Let us now square the results. Okay? What is 7.8 squared? 7.8 times 7.8. You calculate, please. How much again? 60.84. Okay. Next. 8.2 times 8.2. 67.24. 6.2 times 6.2. 38.44. 7.8 squared. We have already 60.84 for that. What about 5.8 squared? 33.64. What about 1.2 times 1.2? What about 6.8 times 6.8? 46.24. What about 4.2 times 4.2? 17.64. 6.2 na another, that's 38.44. What about 2.2? 4.84. Okay. what are you gonna do next? Okay, you tell me, Galileo, what are you gonna do next? You get, okay, kanang last column nato, kanang atong gipang square, i-add ni tanan, o how much man i-add tanan? Use your calculator, please. You will be getting how much for that? Sige, I'll give you time to use your calculator. So again, you add all the numbers there sa last column, mao na ang next step nato nga buhaton. So how much is our sum? Very good, 369.6. Now, let's make use of the formula now. Let's start with S squared. We have the summation of this one. So, we have 369.6. And what's the value of n? 10 minus 1. So, simply 369.6 divided by 9. So, what is 369 divided by 9? $41.07 na siya. I-round off lang nato, ha? So, meaning, this is equal to 41.07. So, this is what you call your variance. Okay? Now, let's go. Let's erase this one first. Okay? Now, let's go to the standard deviation. So, I'm gonna be using S is equal to the square root of, let's use this one, 369.6 divided by 9. So, pila may answer ninyo, ana? Let's use a calculator. Keep nato. Minimize ni nato. Asa to? Pila to atong isolve? That was 369. Pwede ra jud, Galileo, if you don't have like ing aning a function, 369 divided by 6. Or 369, sorry. 369.6 divided by 9 equals. Then you click the square root, then click answer, equals. It will give you how much? 6 point, round off. How much is this? Okay, 6.40. Look at 0. What is next to 0? It's 8. So what are you going to do with 0? It becomes 1. So the result is 6.41. There you go. This is 6 point, change color first, 6.41. And this is what you call your standard deviation.